We move on to having the first panel discussion for the day. They would quickly set up. I would introduce, the topic is going to be the role of exchanges and wallet in building blockchain games. The moderator for this session would be Pratik Oswal from Altcoin Bus. Pratik, over to you, and you can make the introduction to the panel members. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Pratik Oswal. I'm the head of Altcoin Buzz Labs. So I'll just give you a quick introduction about what Altcoin Buzz Labs does, and then we can start off with the panel discussion. So Altcoin Buzz Labs essentially is a platform which invests into very early stage projects and any project that wants to migrate from Web 2 to Web 3. So we help them transition it right from the legal infrastructure to creation of the pitch deck, to creation of the tokenomics, token utility, introduction to VCs, exchanges, launchpads, and then connection with market makers. And then we have a after portfolio care wherein we have invested in more than 400 projects. So we connect them with all our portfolio companies if they want to partner with any of them. So it's not just related to gaming, but we do DeFi, NFTs, chains, L1, L2 solutions. So everything that is there in Web3. So that's what something Altcoin Buzz covers. So it's essentially a media and research company. And on behalf of Altcoin Buzz today, we are going to have a panel discussion on the role of exchanges and wallets in helping blockchain games. And I'd like to invite my panelists one by one. So firstly, I'd like to call upon Mr. Rashmi Reddy from WazirX. So Rashmi, can we have you on board? So WazirX, as we all know, it's one of the, I'd rather say it's one of the leading exchanges in India. And hi, Rashmi. Next up, I'd like to call upon my fellow colleague, Siddhartha Gupta from CoinDCX, which again is, I think, one of the first and second biggest exchanges from India today are on board. So that's a very good panel to talk to. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Shailesh Lakhani from Sequoia Capital. We all have heard about Sequoia, so no need for introduction to Shailesh. Welcome, Shailesh. Lastly, I'd like to call Stefan Colins from Venly, which provides tech for all blockchain-related games. Please. Can you have the mic, Siddharth? OK, so let's begin the discussion. So I'd like to first maybe begin with Rashmi, since it's sitting immediately on the left. So something that we have heard a lot in the entire blockchain space is play to earn, free to play, or pay to play. And we have started seeing that, or maybe it's a perception that most of these games have started hitting some sort of a threshold wherein play to earn, maybe it's no longer moving in the right direction. So Rashmi, would like to know your view on it. Like, do you think the market is already saturated for play to earn, or do you think there's still a lot of room for it?
Thanks for having me here, Pratik. So I will start with this. I think we are seeing the early days of play to earn right now. Yes, there are challenges on the play to earn space. I think the hyperinflation problem which you mentioned about the economy for play to earn is a challenge. And I think that was a challenge also, if I have to say, with the cryptos when it started, right? So it is essentially a start of a trend in which we see one breakthrough happen, what Axie Infinity did, and showed that, hey, now play to earn can actually happen at scale. But at the same time, we unlock some challenges. We see, okay, maybe NFTs is one of the challenge.
Okay, sorry, much clearer.
NFTs is one of the challenge. The liquidity around NFTs, the quality of games have been a challenge, and obviously the economy has been a challenge. I think what would happen in the next few months, maybe a year or so, is these challenges will get solved by innovators, by games, and that's when we actually see the play-to-earn economy, the tokens, and everything shoot off.
OK, so like another example was, since you mentioned about Axie Infinity, so we recently saw Stepin came up with a very different kind of utility, which was move to earn. And like the more you move, the more tokens you get, and that NFT of yours starts wearing out, and then you have to use those tokens to again rebuild your shoes or rebuild your NFT. That way, it creates a good utility towards it. But in case of play to earn, we have observed that users are earning those tokens, and rather than, like in case of Axie, rather than rebuying those Axies or feeding their Axies, they're just selling it off in the open market. So what do you think, Rashmi, should be a good token utility that should be in mind for, like, we have a lot of budding entrepreneurs of Web2 who are probably going to start writing those token utility papers and white papers. So what do you think should be at the pinnacle, at the center for all of these guys while designing the entire token utility for any game. So would like to hear your thoughts on it.
I think this is a very long question, very difficult problem to solve in general. But I would put a couple of thoughts around it. There are a few research papers out there. I think Folius Ventures has essentially released a white paper of sorts around Play to Earn. That's a great read. I would recommend that to read. I think I subscribe to most of those facts which is written there. The Play to Earn economy is not only about giving tokens out. Yes, you said it right. There would be rent seekers as players who would try to quickly exit the system and do it, right? So what we would see is how the Web2 gaming has been formed. The Web3 would be a different structure altogether. And what would happen there is mostly we would find some constraints getting built. We would find an economy layer around them, which is like a circular economy of sorts. So people can essentially stay invested into the system. And my thought, my take on that is it will not be a single game which will try to do everything, but a bouquet of games coming together or a group of games coming together and solving the economy amongst themselves. That could be one of the takes there. But yes, I think it's still early days. There are many structures happening. One thing I would say though, the hyperinflation is a symptom, not the disease itself. The disease is the economy design which is there. That needs to be solved first, and hyperinflation will not come in then.
So I believe most of, like, we need to start thinking maybe 2 years, 3 years down the lane, then, you know, not a way to attract a lot of new gamers right now by giving out too many free tokens, because that is essentially going to hurt your project in the longer run. So that is something, that's a key takeaway from, you know, how to design your token utility. So any of you three would like to, you know, add on some thoughts on what should be the prime focus while designing token utility? Siddharth or?
Sure. So according to me, if you ask me, right, a lot of people here, not here essentially, I'm talking about globally, right, when they look at, gamify or this as a ecosystem, right, they think of this as gambling, right? The best examples are, of course, the countries like China. South Korea, which is the biggest gaming industry, has specific restrictions on how gamify would work, right? And that's primarily because a lot of tokens early in their ecosystem, instead of thinking about the gameplay, they started focusing more on the yield of the token, right? Which, in my personal opinion, deviated from what actually a play to earn should ideally do for you, right? For someone to actually, get the maximum value from your play to earn, you have to build the base, which is your game, right? And not work or not too much think about the token economics right from day one itself, right? So yeah, that from my perspective is one aspect that when you're thinking about play to earn or thinking about anything in the gamify space, that is something that you should actually focus on. Build your game right.
That's a very good takeaway, because we have seen what happened with majority of the dexes while they were doing the yield farming rewards. So, just giving out yields just to attract more liquidity, and in this case, to attract more players. So it can help you initially to garner a lot of audience, to have a very captive, initial influx of users. But like the more and more they stick around with you and the more rewards you keep on giving, it's definitely going to hurt your project in the long run. So this is something, you need to keep in mind. So Siddharth, coming back to a follow-up question on this. So this becomes, some sort of a thing that all of these developers have to think about. Token utility, of course, is one of it. So what do you think, like from an exchange perspective, are the entry barriers for the users in terms of, it could be anything. It could be it's a much broader question, but users face a lot of problems when it comes to liquidity as well. So maybe collaborating with market makers or any other entry barriers that you think are a majority hurdle for most of the developers who are trying to migrate from Web 2 to Web 3?
So from an exchange perspective, right, and talking about how we at CoinDCX look at, any token at CoinDCX, right, it has to be very important that, there is very less possibility or probability a pump and dump happening in a token, right?
Okay.
I mean, we are all aware how crypto tokens work and what's the kind of pump and dump that can happen in the system, right? And that is why the two important things is, a lot of people, first of all, when they come to us, they talk about their project being decentralized, right? And when you actually look at everything in much more detail, it's not really decentralized. You have to first question the nature of decentralization that they're talking about, right? So that is the first entry point that we look into, right? To make sure that, if there is actual decentralization from a technology perspective, is there, as I said, the possibility of a pump and dump happening, right? And then, of course, a very important factor from an exchange perspective is also the community around a project, right? Because we've seen that communities can actually make or build a project, right? We've had enough instances of that in the past, right? There will be enough instances in the future. So yeah, from an exchange perspective, these are certain things that I feel are very, very important.
So when you say decentralization, so does it mean decentralization of development, or does it have to be a governance of the token utility has to be governed by a DAO, which decides the entire future of the project? So what is it that the exchange looks at?
Okay, actually both, if you ask me, right? But I'll not still say that, a DAO is still like the, it's like the must-have kind of a thing to, get your project out there. Well, DAO helps, right? We know a lot of tokens out there which have a governance token, right? Atlas Polis being one of the most common examples in the GameFi space. So yes, there are multiple advantages that a governance token brings in. And it also, of course, builds our faith into the project as well, so not denying that. But yeah, therefore, essentially what is important is the decentralization of the network, right? The other thing is, one more thing that I forgot to mention is incentivization at the nodes that you have, right? A lot of projects in the past that we have seen were not actually incentivizing their nodes, right, or those who are processing their nodes. So how you build those economics, right, is very important when you're especially moving from Web 2 to Web 3, right? So yeah, for us, it's decentralization of the project or the blockchain in which it is based on, right? Are they on an existing blockchain? Are they building a new blockchain themselves, right? And then, of course, if there's a governance token, that definitely helps on top of it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Siddharth. So I think that's a brilliant insight in terms of what is it that exchanges are looking for in terms of, while listing. We'll come to that question again in a bit. I'd like to hear Rashmi's thought as well on what are the things that exchanges look at while listing a project, because I'm sure many budding entrepreneurs out here would want their token to be listed on great exchanges like WazirX, CoinDCX, and so on. So Rashmi, if there were just 3 special points that you'd like our entrepreneurs to know about, what is it that you look at in terms of due diligence while listing that particular token on your exchange?
So I think the first one is about, it's not a pump and dump token that you are doing. So there's a healthy economy design behind it, right? And it is not just about the pricing, is what's the market cap, what's the fully diluted value or of the token per se, but also the fundamentals of how you are using it inside the game. I think everyone would agree 90% of the games out there actually are Ponzi schemes where you first get, the first movers get it and then everyone suffers afterwards, right? So that's definitely a red flag and we try to stay away. The second one is, like Siddharth mentioned, is the community, right? How strong is the community backing? How deep are they inside that per se? And how are they invested into the system? Now, decentralized governance or not is secondary. I think most projects start with a centralized approach and move towards a decentralization. So, so it's more about the community and the roles that they are playing. And third, which we obviously focus more, is how big or how invested is India into this. WazirX is all about India. We are not only focusing on global, but we are focusing primarily on Indian market, Indian users, and Indian public in general, right? So does it make sense for India, right? How big is the India community or the India user base or the India demand coming across this thing? So if there is a substantial number, and only then we start looking deeply into these projects in general.
Got it. So a good key takeaway, I'd say rather than three, like there were two major points. One is avoid creating a pump and dump kind of a scheme when you're building your particular game. And second is community focused, and there has to be a massive community. Undoubtedly, any exchange would want a very healthy community. And if it's WazirX, or I believe with CoinDCX as well, they are more focused on Indian community. So try to ramp up your community while you're also building a game, because game development happens at one side, but community building, marketing, that is a key factor that is going to catapult your project to a next level. And speaking of the first point, so I'd like to hear Mr. Shailesh's thought on it. So, Rashmi mentioned that it has to be like pump and dumps have to be avoided. So we have often observed like many of the KOLs or influencers or some of the VCs also in this space. So they are known to get in early at a seed round or pre-seed or private round, and then as soon as the tokens get listed, so they start dumping it on the investors. And we have known Sequoia to be one of the leading investors, and it's a brand reputation to be affiliated with Sequoia because they are known for its integrity, their honesty, and the support that they provide to all of the projects. So Shailesh would like to know, what is it that you look at into projects? So let's talk about Web3, not Web2 today. So what is it that you look at in Web3 projects while making an investment? So any specifics that you're targeting?
So, I mean, I think Web3 is different in a lot of ways, where control and ownership of assets rests with users. But it's not different in the sense that things need to make sense. As in unlimited token issuance or pump and dump are things that exist in Web2 or in the real world as well. But those are bad things. And for some reason, Web3 needs to relearn all the basics of economics 101 all over again. You don't need to do that. Like we need to make things in Web3 that people want, games that are fun to play, in the case of GameFi, things that appeal to different classes of users, perhaps. Maybe some users are short-term in nature and they just want to have a chance of making money quickly, but they're willing to risk a lot. Other users are really invested in a game and are ones that will stay along for a long time. There's a community that they like, or there's a set of IP or characters or story that they resonate with, and they want to stay with the game for a long time. We are looking for people who are really trying to build things authentically and with sustainability in mind, things that endure. And I think a lot of the economics will be ones where the game developer actually takes very little. The game developer has different paths for different classes of users who want different things. The game developer looks to learn a lot from what the community is doing and not overly influence the community. And yeah, investors have some role to play in all this, but it's much more about the design and the IP that comes along with this, and someone who thinks about these things from a sustainability point of view. There's a lot of incentives to make money quickly in this space that are less than ethical. And yeah, we're looking for folks who are avoiding the short-term temptations and looking to build something that can really be massive.
That makes sense as well. And as you rightly pointed out, so success is never achieved by a windfall. It is achieved by burning the midnight oil. So you have to keep on striving harder and harder. So Shailesh, a follow-up question to this would be, so many of the Web2 entrepreneurs right now probably don't have the funding to bootstrap their project. So in the past, we saw that they were coming up with a good white paper and raising funds on the white paper and then going towards game development. But of late, we have seen that most of the big investors, they are only investing into projects which at least have a POC or an MVP or a working model ready. So what would your recommendations be for that group of people who are really short on funds and they don't even have the basic capital to bootstrap their project? So what would be the best approach for them? And is it, does it make sense to raise equity at a very early stage? So what are your thoughts on it, Shailesh?
I mean, I think a big reason that funding is available to people who have built something is that's a big proof point, that you can actually put something out there. That's something that a lot of people or a lot of startups fail at in the earliest stages. But I suspect why there's so much interest here, and this conference is as big as it is, and the amount of hype around the space is that there is a lot of funding available. we see many Web2 studios here that now are exploring Web3 because a lot of the sponsors that are listed here are all folks who invest in games.
Right.
And many of them invest at very, very early stages. And including ourselves, we would often invest at very early stages as well. But I think it shouldn't be a bad thing that you can create something before looking for funding. Look, the biggest investment that the founder or the founding team makes is their time. And them to prove it out with their own resources to get a sense of how this could go and how this could be is probably more valuable for the founder than it is for the investor. That they'll have a much greater sense of confidence and understanding of what this could become, and will probably be able to raise money even with their own confidence, just in a much easier way.
That makes sense. So even like I'd like to correlate with Shailesh's idea on this. So even at Altcoin Buzz or Sequoia Capital, so this is something that we invested. So we always invest in the founder. So this is something, a great key takeaway for you guys, like develop the right skill sets, the right knowledge that is required to make the game, have the right vision. And even though you don't have the funds to create a POC or MVP ready, but you have this vision, chalk it down on a pitch deck, on a white paper, and I'm sure many of the VCs are going to help you out. So they are investing into the founders mainly, and if the game is not so great, but they see the vision in the founder, so I'm sure you'll be helped out at that point. So moving on to Stefan, so would like to understand, let's talk about how wallets have helped. So because without wallets, there's no way for you to play games. So wallet probably plays one of the most important entry, it's sort of like an entry barrier. Without wallets, you cannot play a game. You cannot have a Web3 component added to it. So Stefan, I mean, it's a huge, huge market. So firstly, we'd like to hear about how Venly is helping solve this problem to help games. And then I have a few questions for you as well, Stefan. So we can begin with how Venly is solving this problem of connecting wallets with games.
So Venly actually started as a blockchain development company, but they really saw at first that onboarding people was really an issue back in 2017-18. So actually our mission today is really to onboard as many as possible users on an easy way. And we are here, maybe are crypto natives, and we know how to install MetaMask, stuff like that, and we know how to get money from an exchange to our wallets. It's still, exciting to send money from an exchange to a MetaMask. So, but if we want to have mainstream to the games and to the platforms, I guess that, and it's important to have wallets, and that's actually what we do. We have today more than 2.4 million wallet users already, just by creating a wallet, Google Connect, LinkedIn, or whatever. So actually we use the Web 2 and we bridge it to Web 3. So everybody knows, for instance, the sandbox. If you go to the sandbox, you can create an account with Google Connect. So we are actually the company behind that, and we onboarded over more than 1 million users because it's very easy. And we want to onboard and we want to bring the mainstream. And for a development company, you can have a very nice game, but if you don't have a solution to onboard people on a very easy use, then you can, it's like you have the best web shop without any user. It's the same for a game. And that's actually our mission. And that, so it's very important.
That actually makes sense as well. So like making the Web3 component as user-friendly and as resonant with Web2, that will ease the process of onboarding of users to start using Web3. Now, there's a very obvious challenge, probably a great business idea for some of you developers that I have personally faced, and probably, let's hear if Stephen has a solution for it. But let's say I'm playing some game on that is built on Tezos. So I have to use Temple Wallet, if I'm not wrong. Then if I have to play something on Avalanche or Phantom or BSC or Polygon, I have to use MetaMask. If I have to use, let's say Solana, some game built on Solana, I have to use Solid Wallet. If I have to use Polkadot, I have to use a JS extension wallet. So there is always a problem of maintaining different types of wallets. Of course, the seed phrases are not the same for non-EVM compatible wallets, since some of the chains are built on EVM, some on Rust, some on Substrate, so on and so forth. So, Stephen, do you see a possibility in the future where, let's say, I can have Pratik.wallet, right? And then it doesn't matter if you are sending me something on Tezos or on Solana or on any of the EVM compatible chains or on Polkadot, and it by default comes to my wallet. So it creates such an ease of use for the entire mass of audience, where a single wallet can interact with all blockchains. I don't know how that can be done, but do you think that this is a possibility in the future?
Yeah, I'm sure it's possible because we are doing it today. So with our wallet, we support already over 12 blockchains. Okay. And when it comes to NFTs, we support like, the fifth biggest blockchains. Like we are preferred partner of Polygon, we have BNB chain, we have Hedera and other chains. So actually, if you have a wallet, a vanilla wallet, then you can add over 12 blockchains and wallets from there. So you have one place to join them all actually. And I think it's very important. Back in the days where you have like a lot of shops with loyalty cards and they ask you a card, you have like a wallet with 10, 20 cards, it's an issue. And I guess it's important that you have a solution or a wallet that is acting as, first of all, the authentication way, single sign-on. Use a wallet and it's connected to a lot of projects. And secondly, indeed, sending money to a wallet or keeping money in a wallet or an NFT should be very much more easy than today. And we are supporting it today, so we are building it. So it's possible already. Yeah.
So, but I would assume that all the chains that you're supporting are EVM compatible. So I was talking about cross non-EVM compatible chains being integrated into a single wallet. So is that something that you guys are?
Yeah, it's a mission. Today we are integrating, of course, EVM compatible, but we're also in talking with Solana and other not EVM compatible chains, because at the end of the day, we should get rid of the blockchain talk and focus on the experience of what we're doing. If we want to become the Web3, the new internet, then actually the blockchain is the underlying technology, the wallet is a digital currency of our new space, and we should focus on the experience. So as long as we cannot connect and have the interoperability, it's not only for NFTs, but it's also for tokens, it's also for wallets, it's for the entire system, and yeah, in the crypto space, it's very important that we work on that. And this is where I see a lot of things happening in this space today. And it's a challenge, but we will get there. But we are still early. You hear it a lot, but we are early. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why we have some brilliant minds here who are, developers. So this is a very obvious problem. Like we saw the problem with bridges, which is being solved to quite an extent now. But if you guys can come up with a solution where there is a single wallet for all chains, it doesn't have to be EVM compatible, all chains, single wallet, I think that solves majority of the problems. Rashmi, any points on this that you'd like to add?
I think we have to look at this problem also a little differently. End user need not know what wallet is, right? So one of the problems, if you see how WazirX solved, or exchanges in India like DCX, WazirX and others solved, I would say 80 to 85% of the user do not even go to the blockchain transfers or wallets, do not see what is happening there, do not look at or do not understand how blockchain technology works, right? Most play-to-earn games today are starting with, hey, add a connector wallet, bring in your NFTs, bring in your funds, and then start playing. That's the fundamental barrier that has to be moved out. End users will need not understand how a blockchain technology works, how that tech should be behind the scene. It should not be on the forefront.
Right, right.
And if we are building something, that should be the first, and that's where exchanges. So let's say I have got tokens after playing games, right? There will be a seamless integration with an exchange which will say, hey, I want to get fiat out of this, and you enter your details and your fiat goes to your bank account. That's it. You don't have to think, okay, oh, I have to now transfer it from ERC20 wallet or other wallet to this exchange wallet, what chain, what network it would be on. All those are confusing. We don't need those things in a game. And I believe that in the next year or so, we would see a lot more UX innovation around this, and it will be easier for the end user to do it, and so will be there for the developers as well to integrate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's a novel problem, and if you can come up with a solution, nothing like it. So I think we can now open up questions for the audience if you'd like to ask to any of our panelists. So we are happy to hear any questions from you guys.
Would request the audience to raise your hand, so one of us can find you.
There's one in the front here.
Yeah.
I have one technical question. So how this hash time lag contracts and exchanges are centralized, right? So how these two things work? exchanges are centralized. So the money goes to the exchange and then it goes to the other person. So in hash time lock contracts, it is like direct P2P, right?
I'm not sure who can take that question. I'm personally not a developer, so.
No, I didn't actually get the question.
So there are some P2P, means one person to another person, direct exchange of the tokens, right? So I have ETH tokens. I can get Bitcoin tokens. So in centralized exchange, the first money goes to the exchange, right? So,
so what's the question here?
The people are started using, let us say, P2P exchange. Then I don't need to go to WazirX or CoinDCX, right?
So there are P2P, DEXs are P2P exchanges, right?
Yeah, so P2P exchange, so in WazirX also I can do P2P exchange or?
No, we are a centralized exchange. P2P is the way you get in funds,
Correct.
but not a DEX exchange per se. You're talking about decentralized exchanges where people can go and trade their coins, and there are plenty of them out there as well.
Correct, correct. So when P2P exchanges are there, then why people will come to WazirX or centralized exchanges?
I just said that some time back, where it's for the experience. People do not understand blockchain. People do not understand wallet. 90% of the users of WazirX haven't seen a wallet, haven't used a wallet.
Correct. So because of the ease of use, people will come and then use this. Because whenever the centralized exchange comes, we have to pay commission, right?
I'd like to answer that question. So basically, we're talking about two totally different things here. So P2P exchange, we call it as a DEX, which is basically an automated market maker. There is no order book system. It works on a X into Y equals Z formula. And even there, you have to pay a fee which is much higher than what WazirX or CoinDCX is charging, which is 0.3%, all right? And that works when you want to exchange one crypto asset to another crypto asset.
Correct.
That is going to charge you 0.3%, which is the standard rate across almost all the DEXs. UniV3 is again charging 0.3, but it's working on a different, like V3, more capital efficient way of exchange of assets, so the slippage is less. So there are multiple things. One is slippage. There's not going to be enough volume. Like if you're looking to do $1 million trade, so you're going to probably face a 30 to 35% loss. Same thing if you're trying to do on WazirX or CoinDCX. So the slippage for you is going to be, very small, probably, less than a percentage of slippage. That's one thing. Second is, you're always going to need a centralized exchange when you have to do a fiat on-ramp. You cannot do that with a DEX. You cannot buy BTC using INR. You have to first hold USDT or USDC or ETH or whatever, and that's when you'll be able to buy that crypto asset. So centralized exchange is always going to be the entry point, and after that, if you want to do your transactions on a decentralized exchange, which is what you're calling, I am assuming, as a P2P DEX, which is a decentralized exchange, so you can use that, but that'll never work in terms of fiat on-ramp, and you'll always pay a much higher fee in it, because it's a 0.3% transaction fee, which they charge as well, plus slippage. Plus, if you're adding liquidity, you face impermanent loss. Plus, there's reserve loss. There are a lot of aspects to it, so I think that's...
Okay, thank you. One more question related to wallet is, like, whenever I talk to people who are not aware of blockchain, so they say that if I forgot my the keys, or I lost, that device is crashed, so then how do I recover?
I don't think
you cannot.
You cannot.
Yeah. You cannot. The fund is lost forever.
Okay.
You lose your key, you lose your funds. Always keep your seed phrase. So another key takeaway is never store your seed phrase. I think most of you all know it, but never store it on any electronic device. Whenever you're opening a account on MetaMask or any of the wallets, so always note it down on a piece of paper and store it somewhere. Don't store it on any digital device, because anyone who gets access to your seed phrase, your funds would be gone. And good to use any wallet, Ledger wallet or something.
Can I be a little cheeky here? So use an exchange. Don't go through all this hassle.
Yeah. Okay.
And a centralized exchange.
Any other question, please? Yeah. Gentleman right there.
Please.
So my question is, like, I want to know more about the legal aspect of the coin. I used to ask Pratik regularly about it. So I thought, like, people from WazirX here, people from, Sequoia is here. So I'd like to understand more about the coin regulation. So how you regulated, WazirX is having a coin. So we like to understand where is the incorporation, what is the regulation. And then this is a question for WazirX. My other question, let's try to get into this.
Can you just repeat the question? You said the coin regulation of WazirX?
Yeah, WazirX is an Indian company, right? So where I like to understand that where is the regulation that India is not having any kind of regulation for coin launches, as per my understanding, right? So we should incorporate somewhere so that we can launch the coin, and even though if it is a utility coin, right? So that is why we're trying to understand what about the regulation structure which you follow for WazirX coin.
Okay, so launching of coin on WazirX or in India is not regulated yet, like you said. And that answer or that question could be better addressed by a government authority than me per se.
So we have a brilliant person here, Mr. Stefan Gupta, who's also the Chief Justice for the Supreme Court, I think for Rajasthan, as well as he was an advisor in the Supreme Court of India. We have a session by Mr. Stefan Gupta in a few hours. So any legal related questions, I think he's the perfect person. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge out here, and you guys can do it. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Maybe you can talk it offline. Kamesh, Mr. Gupta is sitting right on the front stage, so you can take it offline.
Let me connect.
We don't have any more time. I mean, we'll have the panelists, sticking around, and we can bombard them with more questions during the rest of the evening. So anyway, thank you so much, Siddharth, Shailesh, Rashmi, and Stefan, and Pratik. Thank you so much for moderating the session. A round of applause for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is going to be on the path.